Just a quick note, this is available on the podcast. I only mention this because if you're desperate for the next chapter, the podcast releases 2 hours before it does on the main channel publicly. So if you're interested in that, head over to the podcast and subscribe there. It'd be very much appreciated. The link is in the description. Anyways, on to the story. The Long Way Home, Chapter 12, Before the Hunt. The gentle sound of wooden and deer antlers, beads clicking together, cut through the long way's constant drone and Vincent's throbbing headache like ringing bells. The George boy's quiet, melodious voice was a chorus of brassy trumpets as he read, and when they had plaited a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and a reed in his right hand, and they bowed the knee before him, and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! Vincent tried to remember why in the void Jason would be in his room, as he blearily reached to his vital supplies. His hand found nothing, and he grunted in surprise. Oh, you're awake, the George boy said softly. Vincent winced. Did you dump my stuff? He asked warily. No. Should I have? Vincent groaned and said, Headache. There's ibuprofen on the shelf and a glass of water too, the George boy said. The beads of the Vincent's rosary clacked as the boy'd steady hands. We might need those, Vincent. You're just poisoned and you're coming off being sedated and had a local anesthetic. Do you really think drinking's a good idea right now? Vincent took the pills and groaned. How long was I out? 2 days. I was starting to think we'd have to look up how to set up an IV drip and some other things. Vincent became uncomfortably aware of the sensations of sheets brushing against fur and skin in areas that ought to be covered by clothes. Oh, God, he moaned as he drew his blankets up over his chest as if that would change anything. Your clothes were soaked in blood, and you were unconscious for hours. It wouldn't be right to let you wallow in that, the George boy explained. The beads of Vincent's rosary clicked, and Vincent's head throbbed. I understand. The third sorrowful mystery? Aye. For courage. Whose? Mine. The crew's and yours, the George boy answered. I had to look up how to pray the rosary, he admitted. My prayers aren't usually so formal. This coming from the Mr. Boy, Vincent tried to joke. All the kid said in return then was a terse aye. You mad at me or something, Chief? You and I are friends now, the kid began. There was a tight edge to his voice. We have duty to one another now. We owe each other something, more than something. Do you know the story of Gideon George? I'm not a mangled slave left for dead in the middle of a war, kid. Aren't you? Of course not, Vincent scoffed. You see a master cracking a whip over me? Men sometimes make their own masters, their own cages. Kid, you don't. You told me that you could regulate. The George kid said with surprising heat behind his soft voice. You call blowing through a quarter of that stash regulating? You even thought about what you're going to do when you run out. You seen any liquor stalls around here? You gonna build a still in your engine room? Kid, I know it's not healthy, but I gotta get some sleep somehow, Vincent confessed. What makes you think it's any of your business? Because you're my friend, and I owe it to you, the boy said. Friends don't let friends kill themselves, however slowly. That hurt, Vincent. It hurt him because that simple truth was that there was a child's fear and betrayed pain beneath those heated words. And he put those there. All right, kid. All right, Jason. I owe you too. In my own defense, it used to be worse, and I'm trying to wean off the stuff. The dim hum of the reactor in the deck below hummed to fill the calming quiet between them. You're not alone anymore, Jason said at length. You have friends again. You don't get to pretend it's not that way. Not anymore. Not after you and I had fought together. Fought to protect our friends. Jason, Vincent began, his headache finally subsiding a little more. I'm sorry. I'm trying. Jason's voice seemed to lose its edge and anger just a little as he said, You have friends to help. You get out of trouble now. Vincent couldn't bring himself to look at Jason as he said, Yeah. The beads and the Vincent's rosary clacked. Vincent, Jason began once more, this time the more deliberate patience in his voice. Who is Cal? Vincent lay in the dimness. He reached for the place where Cal's knife hung on his belt when he left the long way and found himself chagrined in his absence. He was about your age. He was kind, curious, brave, a fine boy. He was my son. What happened to him? Pirate raid, Vincent spat. They hit fast and burned down half the town and hit my little homestead. Killed my humans, killed my wife. Cal was gone. They took him. Took other children from the town too. Killed other friends, other wives, other fathers. And so now you're on a one-man crusade? Something like that, Vincent said. What about you? What about me? Jason asked with evident confusion. Is this more trying to live up to the name? More pressure to bring honor to the Georges? Oh, now that slowed down, the kid said softly. Vincent heard a smile in those words. The beads of Vincent's rosary clicked together. Yes and no. I'm always careful not to dishonor the family. I mean, I do my best, but this is about being friends. I guess you could say that how I think about friendship comes from how the family does things. But that's a knot I don't figure I can untangle. Why not join one of the guilds out there in the CIP? Tried that, Vincent rumbled ruefully. I was on a mission, and they were after loot and bounties. They let pirates go that should have been brought down to get more loot on a higher bounty. You realize they're going to flag you as an officer material in boot camp, right? The kid let out a satisfyingly pained groan and answered, I figured there's a good shot I can be an NCO instead. A couple Georges went over a decade of service in E-Scale, after all. Why not just get a letter of marque from the Republic? Or maybe something like that from one of the CIP governments. For one, we ought to be able to handle our own space without Republican help. For the other, well, couldn't afford it. Fees and licenses and all kinds of nonsense. And since I don't loot the pirates, Vincent trailed off and let the silence grow between them again, before he asked, What do you think about the stories around your family? I try not to, the boy sighed wistfully. It can be summed up with what my Uncle Jason told me. Look, kid, one day you'll serve, and you'll just be doing your job like every other trooper, and there'll just happen to be a camera nearby. Then folks will find out your last name, give you a silly nickname, and then the whole damn universe will go out of its way to try and kill you. So you got to be tough. He told me that a month before he got killed. You ever consider not joining? The boy looked at Vincent in the dimness. Can't you hear it? Hear what? The people calling out for help. Bad things happen. The wheel turns. Winter comes, and people are in trouble. Just look at us. We're in trouble right now, huh? Everyone does their bit to push back the darkness. Everyone decent anyway. And I'm a fighter. I know that about me. I'll do my bit. Stay in until I figure I've pushed back that way enough. Then do like everyone else and find a life after service. We aren't a serving family because folks expect it of us. We're made to help. Some of us in the R&I, some in the Navy, some in the SAR Corps, some in the relief fleets. Nobody in the Army yet, praise God. But every other service has seen a George or two. It's all that other stuff that gets in the way. The stories, movies even, the medals, and the fame. For all the deeds we're celebrated for, we're still just folk trying to do our best to push back the dark however we can. All we do is our little bit. Does that explain it? I think it does, kid, Vincent said softly. He looked at the kid and saw there was something still weighing on him. All right, kid, what's the bad news? Tran got some data off that tablet. The long way finally passed the data we recorded. The good news is that we have a route for the next 2 weeks. The bad news is that we're in hostile territory. What kind of hostile? It's better if you see it for yourself. All right, come help me up, Vincent grumbled. On second thought, I need clothes. Been meaning to ask, though, what is that? Doesn't sound like an old French. Reformed Cajun, the boy answered as he stood up and began to retreat out of Vincent's room. Isn't that? Well, it's more like Reformed Cajun reconstructed, and it just goes to show, despite everything, we're still here. What happened to all the mystery? Think about Gideon, and you'll figure it out, Jason said with a wry lilt. You're a pretty canny fella. Jason laid a borrowed rosary on the shelf where he'd found it and left Vincent to his privacy. Then in the galley, he was confronted by 3 pairs of worried eyes. He staggered past them to the fridge, opened it up, and poured himself a glass of honeyed water that Vi had thoughtfully made him. Then he sat down and began to sip at it. Well, Cadet demanded. He's up, Jason said offhandedly. There was a chair, and he lurched step towards the cabins where Jason said, and trying to get dressed. You're an absolute butt, Trondre told him, and changed direction to join him at the table. You were talking in there for a while, Vi tentatively said, as she too decided to scamper to the fridge for a cold beverage. Cadet slid into the dinette across from Jason and Trondre, and narrowed his eyes at Jason. That's not funny, he declared. It was so, Jason declared in return for his growing grin. You can tell because I'm trying not to laugh. What did you and Mr. Vincent try and talk about? Vi asked as she scrambled up to take a seat beside Trondre. That's private, Jason said softly. Ask him if he'll tell you about it. Oh, okay, she mumbled. Tran, can you bring up the video, please? Why, I think Vincent might appreciate the broth you made being warmed up for him. Cadet, Jason faltered there. I can't think of anything for you and I to do, so sit here and wait. The girl slid out to do as asked, and Jason listened to the sounds of the long ways systems and the bustling of activity from the rest of the crew. He noted that Cadet quickly began to fidget and squirm in his seat, but Jason found that he could live in the noisy silence of the galley. You know what those things are, don't you? He blurted out at length. Aye, some of them. I still think we should wait for Mr. Vincent before we start talking it over, Jason reiterated. I know, you said that already a bunch. Aye, and I didn't change my mind, Jason patiently said again. What I want to know is, should I be scared? Jason looked Cadet dead in the eye and told him, "Anyone who isn't scared straight to the marrow of these things is stupid or dead." The door to Vincent's cabin rattled, and when Jason saw the man limping his way across the galley, he sprang to his feet to offer a little support. "Thanks, kid," the man rumbled, as he put a large, calloused hand on Jason's shoulder and leaned some of his weight on him. Jason labored not to stagger beneath the injured man's weight. My returned with a steaming mug of broth, Tundre with a remote, and the dinette was filled with more or less the way it normally was when all 5 members of the Longways crew were gathered together. Vincent raised a mug to take a sip, but Jason told him it might be a good idea to hold off until after the video. Vincent set down the mug again, and Jason nodded to Tundre. She'd play on the remote, and the large screen came to life on the wall across from the sofa. Jason would have to crane his neck to see. He didn't need to. He'd already seen it enough. He knew it began with a domestic scene amongst some 4-legged crab-like Xenos. He knew that the smaller Xenos looked up at the room's window at the sounds of several cracking sonic booms rolling through the atmosphere of the planet. He knew that the small group of Xenos made strange squealing clicking sounds at each other when the scream of landing craft filled the air of their little village. He knew what the engine's roars fell to idle humming, that the hissing cracks of plasma discharges would drown out even the panicked sounds of the Xenos holding the tablet. He knew that the last thing recorded on the video was a young Exarch woman wielding a plasma caster, bleeding from her eyes and mouth, stepping into the frame and turning so that the pulsing, wriggling giant white maggot protruding from the back of her head could be easily seen. "They're fucking grubs," Vincent said in an ear whisper. "I thought they were exterminated," I worriedly interjected. Vincent looked unsettled and took a sip of the broth to steady himself. Apparently he couldn't help himself from saying, "This is good, thanks." "This doesn't answer what she said," Cadet pointedly observed. "Weren't the consumptives exterminated?" "They were supposed to be," Jason softly confirmed. "But I guess we just wiped out the pocket between Terran space and the friendlies. I know my history. Those things, the stars are better off without them." "Ages and ages ago," Tundre agreed, "but Terrans and we still learn about them in history. The Georges and the Drill Clan have a special reason to learn about them, since the grubs were the entire reason the Lost Boys being funded in the first place." "But I didn't know what that thing was," I objected. "You're 8, right? That's 3rd grade in schools?" Jason asked tentatively. "Yeah." She agreed with a puzzled flick of her rounded ears towards Jason. "I think most schools gave the grub extermination war for 4th grade, he explained. "I don't get it." "What's so scary about a big maggot?" Cadet scoffed. "They take you over," Tundre quietly stated with a shiver. "They take you over and make you kill and eat everyone around you, if not make them hosts for more grubs. And the whole time you know what's happening. The whole time you're screaming inside," Jason said coldly, as Cadet's feathers began to stand on end in an instinct of fear response. "And if that doesn't scare the tar out of you, then you need your head examined." "They raided that village," Vincent muttered. "I know my history, too. The grubs don't raid. They spread. We need more information." "Aye. But how do we get it?" Jason asked as he gathered the shreds of his courage. This wasn't about just getting to his family, or even his duty to get his friends home safe anymore. If what he suspected was true, the whole Republic, the CIP, Roman Nova, the minor Terran nations, the Star Council, the Kingdom of Jacuvia, the Exarch Reformation, and everyone else was at risk. Vincent looked troubled, almost afraid. "We hunt, kids. If we want to get home safe, I'm going to have to take a risk, a big one." End of chapter. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.